Once upon a midnight, in the shadowy outskirts of an ancient forest, there stood a decrepit mansion known as Blackthorn Manor. Whispers of its haunted halls had spread far and wide, but only the bravest or most foolish dared to approach its iron gates. Within the manor lived Lucian, a vampire as old as the manor itself. His life had grown monotonous, his nights blending together into an endless cycle of feeding and solitude. But something had changed recently, something that both intrigued and unnerved him. It began with the arrival of a letter, sealed with a wax insignia he hadn't seen in centuries. The letter was written in an archaic script, one that spoke of an ancient curse tied to the manor, a curse that even he, in all his years, had not fully understood. "The curse awakens," it read. "The shadows stir. Heed the call, or darkness will consume all." Lucian dismissed it at first, thinking it the ramblings of a madman. But then the manifestations began. At first, it was subtle, a chill in the air, the faint echo of laughter in the dead of night. But soon, the hauntings grew bolder. Shadows moved on their own, and disembodied whispers filled the corridors. One night, while wandering through the grand library in search of clues, Lucian felt an overwhelming presence. He turned to find a figure standing in the doorway, a young girl, her eyes hollow and lifeless, her form translucent. She seemed to be searching for something, or someone. "Who are you?" Lucian asked, his voice steady despite the unease gnawing at him. The girl did not respond. Instead, she floated closer, pointing towards an old, dusty book on the highest shelf. Lucian retrieved it, the cover adorned with symbols of protection and banishment. As he opened the book, a piece of parchment fell out. It was a map of the manor, but it showed parts of the house he had never seen before, hidden rooms and secret passages. At the center of the map was a symbol, one that matched the insignia on the letter. Realizing he had no choice, Lucian decided to follow the map's guidance. He ventured deep into the bowels of the mansion, through hidden doors and narrow corridors that seemed to lead him further into the heart of darkness. His journey led him to a room that shouldn't have existed, a chamber beneath the manor where the air was thick with malice. In the center stood an altar, and on it lay a coffin, intricately carved with the same symbols from the letter and the book. As he approached, the room grew colder, the shadows around him twisting and writhing as if alive. The girl appeared again, standing beside the coffin, her eyes now filled with a sorrow that pierced even Lucian's immortal heart. "This is where it began," she whispered, her voice echoing with the weight of centuries. "This is where it must end." Before Lucian could ask what she meant, the lid of the coffin creaked open, revealing a figure within. It was another vampire, but this one was bound in chains, its eyes blazing with an unholy fire. Lucian realized, with dawning horror, that this vampire was the source of the curse, a dark entity that had been imprisoned here long ago. "Release me," the bound vampire hissed, its voice a venomous rasp. "Or face the wrath of the shadows?" Lucian stood at a crossroads. To free the vampire could mean unleashing a terror upon the world, but to leave it bound might mean the curse would consume him and the manor entirely. He had to choose, but time was running out, and the shadows were closing in. As the darkness threatened to engulf him, Lucian knew he had to make a decision. Would he release the cursed vampire and risk everything, or find another way to break the curse? The answer eluded him, and the night seemed to stretch on forever, the fate of Blackthorn Manor hanging in the balance. Lucian's mind raced as he considered his options. Releasing the cursed vampire could have catastrophic consequences, yet he couldn't ignore the possibility that this ancient being might hold the key to lifting the curse. As he stood there, the shadows around him thickened, their whispers growing louder, urging him to act. The young girl floated closer, her expression one of desperate pleading. "There is another way," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the rising din of the shadows, "but it requires great sacrifice." Lucian turned to her, his curiosity piqued despite the perilous situation. "What sacrifice?" he asked, his voice edged with both hope and dread. She pointed to a symbol etched into the altar, a complex sigil that pulsed with a faint, eerie light. "The blood of the willing," she said softly. "A life given freely can bind the darkness and lift the curse." Lucian's heart sank. He was a vampire, sustained by the blood of others, but the concept of willingly offering his own life was foreign and terrifying. Still, the girl's gaze was unwavering, filled with a sadness that told him she knew the gravity of what she was asking. As he pondered her words, the bound vampire within the coffin let out a low, mocking laugh. "Do you truly believe her?" It sneered. "Do you think your sacrifice will mean anything? I am eternal, bound by ancient magic. Your blood is but a drop in the ocean of my power." Lucian's resolve hardened. He had to believe there was another way. He couldn't let this malevolent entity win, nor could he allow the curse to consume everything he held dear. He turned to the girl, determination blazing in his eyes. "Tell me what I must do." The girl's form shimmered, and she began to speak in a language long forgotten. The symbols on the altar glowed brighter, and the shadows recoiled slightly, as if sensing the power of the ancient words. Lucian followed her instructions, carving the sigil into his palm and letting his blood drip onto the altar. As his blood touched the symbols, a blinding light erupted from the altar, illuminating the chamber and casting the shadows back. The bound vampire roared in fury, its chains tightening as the light grew stronger. Lucian felt a searing pain in his hand, but he did not falter. He continued to chant, the girl's voice guiding him. The light began to coalesce, forming a barrier around the coffin. The shadows screeched and writhed, unable to penetrate the protective glow. Lucian's vision blurred, the pain in his hand spreading through his entire body. He knew he was nearing his limit, but he couldn't stop now. Just as he felt he could endure no more, the girl's voice changed. "Now, the final step," she said, her tone filled with urgency. "You must name the curse. Speak its true name, and the binding will be complete." Lucian racked his mind, trying to recall any hint or clue from the letter, the book, the ancient symbols. Then it struck him the insignia on the letter, the one he hadn't seen in centuries. It was the name, hidden in plain sight. With his last ounce of strength, he spoke the name aloud. Althara. The effect was immediate. The light around the altar flared with an intensity that forced Lucian to shield his eyes. The bound vampire let out a final, anguished cry as the chains tightened one last time, pulling it back into the coffin. The lid slammed shut, sealing it with a resounding thud. Lucian collapsed to the ground, his vision dimming. The chamber was silent now, the shadows gone, the oppressive weight lifted. He looked up to see the girl standing over him, her expression one of gratitude and sorrow. "You have done it," she said softly. "The curse is lifted, and the darkness is bound. But your journey is not yet over." Before he could ask what she meant, his vision faded completely, and he slipped into unconsciousness. When Lucian awoke, he found himself in his own quarters, the events of the previous night feeling like a distant dream. But as he looked at his hand, he saw the sigil still etched into his skin, a reminder of the sacrifice he had made. He knew now that the curse was not entirely vanquished. The bound vampire was still a threat, and the secrets of Blackthorn Manor were far from fully revealed. Lucian's quest had only just begun, and the true depths of the manor's darkness remained shrouded in mystery. As he rose to his feet, ready to continue his search for answers, a new determination burned within him. He would uncover the truth, no matter the cost. For in the heart of Blackthorn Manor, the shadows were always watching, waiting for their moment to return. Lucian paced his quarters, the weight of his recent ordeal pressing heavily upon him. The sigil on his hand pulsed with a faint, rhythmic glow, a constant reminder of the bound vampire and the lifted curse. The young girl's parting words echoed in his mind. "Your journey is not yet over." Determined to uncover more about the manor's secrets, Lucian returned to the grand library. He scoured the shelves for anything he might have overlooked, searching for clues that could shed light on the mysteries of Blackthorn Manor. His eyes fell upon a thick, leather-bound tome that seemed to emit a faint aura. Pulling it from the shelf, he carefully opened it, revealing pages filled with cryptic symbols and arcane texts. As he delved deeper into the book, a pattern began to emerge. The symbols matched those on the map he had found, pointing to specific locations within the manor. There were references to hidden chambers, forbidden rituals, and an ancient lineage of guardians tasked with protecting a dark secret. One name stood out, Elysia Blackthorn, the last known guardian of the manor. According to the text, she had vanished centuries ago, leaving behind a legacy shrouded in mystery. The book hinted that Elysia had hidden something of great importance within the manor, a key to unlocking the full extent of its dark power. Lucian knew he had to find this hidden chamber. He retraced the steps from the map, his journey leading him to a part of the manor he had never ventured before, a narrow corridor lined with faded portraits of the Blackthorn lineage. At the end of the corridor stood a large, ornate door, its surface etched with intricate carvings of the same symbols from the book. Taking a deep breath, Lucian pushed the door open, revealing a dimly lit chamber. The air was thick with dust, and the faint scent of old parchment filled his senses. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, and upon it lay an ancient, gilded box. The box was adorned with the Blackthorn insignia, the same one that had appeared on the letter. Lucian approached the box cautiously, sensing a powerful energy emanating from it. As he reached out to touch it, the sigil on his hand glowed brightly, and the box opened with a soft click. Inside, he found a collection of artifacts, a dagger with the hilt encrusted with dark jewels, a small vial of crimson liquid, and a parchment covered in Elysia's meticulous handwriting. The parchment detailed a ritual, one that required the use of the dagger and the vial. It spoke of a way to permanently seal the darkness, but it also mentioned a dire warning. The price of this power is great. Only those of pure intent can succeed. Beware the shadows, for they seek to deceive. As Lucian pondered the implications of the ritual, the chamber grew colder, and a familiar, chilling presence filled the room. The young girl appeared once more, her translucent form shimmering in the dim light. "You have found it," she said, her voice a mix of relief and sorrow. "Elysia's legacy holds the key, but the path ahead is fraught with danger." Lucian nodded, his resolve unshaken. "Tell me what I must do," he urged, his eyes locked onto hers. The girl explained that the ritual required Lucian to journey to the heart of the manor, to a place where the boundaries between the living and the dead were weakest. There, he would have to perform the ritual, using the dagger and the vial to seal the darkness forever. But the shadows would not make it easy. They would do everything in their power to stop him. As Lucian prepared to leave, the girl reached out and touched his hand, the sigil glowing brighter at her touch. "Remember," she whispered, "the shadows are cunning. Trust no one, not even yourself." With her warning echoing in his mind, Lucian set out on his perilous journey. The manor seemed to shift and change around him, corridors twisting and turning in ways that defied logic. The shadows grew bolder, their whispers growing louder, filling his head with doubts and fears. Finally, he arrived at the heart of the manor, a vast, circular chamber bathed in an eerie, otherworldly light. The air was thick with the presence of the supernatural, and Lucian could feel the eyes of countless entities watching him from the darkness. Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward and began the ritual. He carefully followed the instructions on the parchment, using the dagger to draw symbols in the air, the vial of crimson liquid swirling with a life of its own. As he chanted the ancient words, the chamber trembled, and the shadows writhed in fury. Just as he neared the ritual's completion, a figure emerged from the darkness, a mirror image of Lucian, but with eyes that glowed with malevolent intent. The shadowy doppelganger lunged at him, the two of them grappling in a fierce struggle. Lucian fought with all his might, but the doppelganger seemed to know his every move, countering each attack with ease. As they clashed, the vial was knocked from Lucian's hand, its contents spilling onto the ground. Desperation fueled him, and he realized that he had only one chance. In a final, desperate move, Lucian plunged the dagger into his own shadow, the blade piercing through the darkness. The doppelganger let out a guttural scream, dissolving into wisps of smoke. The chamber fell silent, the oppressive presence lifting. With the last of his strength, Lucian completed the ritual, the symbols glowing with a brilliant light that filled the chamber. The shadows recoiled, retreating into the darkness, and the air grew still. Exhausted but victorious, Lucian collapsed to the ground, the sigil on his hand fading as the ritual's power took hold. The darkness was sealed, but he knew that the shadows would never be truly vanquished. They would always be there, lurking in the corners of his mind, waiting for their chance to return. As he lay there, catching his breath, the young girl appeared once more, She smiled, her form shimmering with an ethereal light. "You have done well," she said softly. "But remember, the manor still holds many secrets. Your journey is far from over." With those words, she faded into the light, leaving Lucian alone in the chamber. He knew that the battles he had fought were just the beginning, and that the true depths of Blackthorn Manor's mysteries were yet to be uncovered. And so, with renewed determination, Lucian rose to his feet, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. For in the heart of Blackthorn Manor, the shadows were always watching, waiting for their moment to strike. Lucian's victory was short-lived. As he rose to his feet, he felt an uncheckable weariness settle over him, a bone-deep exhaustion that he couldn't attribute solely to the ritual. The sigil on his hand was still faintly glowing, and he realized that while the darkness had been sealed, something had changed within him. The young girl's words echoed in his mind. "The price of this power is great." He had dismissed it as a mere warning, but now he understood its true weight. The ritual had not just sealed the darkness within the manor, it had bound it to him. Lucian's steps faltered as he made his way back through the twisting corridors. The manor, once a place of malevolent mystery, now seemed to mourn his presence. The shadows no longer whispered, they simply watched, silent and patient. Days turned into weeks, and Lucian found himself unable to leave Blackthorn Manor. Each attempt to cross its threshold resulted in an unseen force pushing him back, confining him within its walls. The sigil on his hand pulsed with an ominous light, a constant reminder of his binding to the manor's curse. His hunger grew insatiable, the blood he consumed no longer satisfying his thirst. He became a prisoner in his own home, tormented by the darkness that now lived within him. The once grand library offered no solace, the ancient tomes only reminding him of the knowledge that had led to his downfall. One night, as he wandered the halls in a futile search for escape, he encountered the young girl again. Her form was more solid now, her eyes filled with a sorrow that mirrored his own. "You should have listened," she said softly, her voice tinged with regret. "The manor's darkness needed a vessel, and you provided it." Lucian's anger flared. "You knew this would happen," he accused, his voice a raw whisper. "You used me." She shook her head. "I warned you, but you were determined to break the curse. Now, you are its keeper." Despair settled over him like a shroud. "Is there no way to free myself?" he asked, his voice trembling. The girl's expression softened. "There is one way, but it requires the ultimate sacrifice. You must destroy the manor and everything within it, including yourself." Lucian's heart sank. The manor had been his home for centuries, a place of refuge and solitude. But now, it was his prison, a constant reminder of the darkness he could not escape. As the days passed, Lucian's resolve hardened. He knew what he had to do. Gathering the ancient artifacts and the parchment detailing the final ritual, he prepared for the end. The young girl appeared once more, guiding him to the heart of the manor where the boundaries between the living and the dead were weakest. With trembling hands, he began the ritual, using the dagger and the vial of crimson liquid. The air grew heavy, the shadows stirring as if sensing their impending doom. As he chanted the ancient words, the manor trembled, its very foundations shaking. The final step required Lucian to plunge the dagger into his own heart, using his blood to fuel the ritual's power. With a last, anguished glance around the chamber, he steeled himself and drove the blade into his chest. The pain was immediate and all-consuming, but Lucian continued to chant, his voice growing weaker with each passing moment. The sigil on his hand flared brightly, and the chamber was filled with a blinding light. The shadows writhed and screamed, their power being torn away. As Lucian's vision dimmed, he saw the young girl standing over him, her expression one of gratitude and sorrow. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice echoing in his mind. "The darkness is finally vanquished." With his last breath, Lucian watched as the manor began to crumble, the walls collapsing in on themselves. The light consumed everything, erasing the darkness and sealing the curse for good. Lucian's sacrifice had saved countless lives, but it came at the ultimate cost. The manor, now reduced to rubble, would be forgotten by time, its secrets buried forever. And in the heart of the ruins, where the shadows had once reigned, there was only silence.